Imagine this for a second. A packed NFL stadium, roaring crowds, flashing lights, and then the camera cuts to Taylor Swift in the stands. She smiles. Somewhere on the field, Travis Kelce looks up. In less than a heartbeat, the internet erupts. Notifications explode, timelines refresh endlessly, and millions of people around the world suddenly feel something. Excitement, joy, curiosity, maybe even jealousy. Before you scroll away, pause right here. Drop a comment, because what unfolds next is not just celebrity news. It's a global mirror reflecting how we form emotional bonds in the digital age. The growing intimacy between Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce has evolved far beyond entertainment headlines. What began as public appearances and subtle gestures of support has transformed into an international conversation about parasocial relationships, a psychological concept that is now trending across search engines, social media platforms, and global news outlets. This is no longer simply a love story between a pop icon and a sports superstar. It is a case study in modern fandom, emotional attachment, and digital intimacy. Every moment is dissected. Taylor's expressions in the VIP box are analyzed frame by frame. Travis's post-game interviews are replayed, slowed down, zoomed in. Old Taylor Swift lyrics resurface, reinterpreted through a new romantic lens. Fans and observers alike connect invisible threads, building narratives in real time. The story grows not because of what Taylor and Travis say, but because of how millions of people feel. This is where the tension begins to rise. Across platforms, reactions range from euphoric support to deep discomfort. Some fans celebrate the relationship as proof of happiness and growth. Others express a sense of loss, as if something personal has been taken from them. Comment sections fill with emotional language usually reserved for close relationships, not distant celebrities. The line between admiration and emotional investment starts to blur. Parasocial relationships, defined as one-sided emotional bonds between audiences and public figures, have existed since the early days of radio and television. But the Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce dynamic has amplified the phenomenon to unprecedented levels. Taylor Swift is not just a global superstar. She is a deeply personal soundtrack to millions of lives. Her music has accompanied breakups, healing, identity formation, and self-discovery. For many fans, she feels familiar, safe, close. So when her real-life happiness becomes visible, it triggers real emotional responses. International media outlets begin to shift the narrative. Psychologists, sociologists, and digital culture experts are brought into the conversation. Articles analyze why people feel personally affected by celebrity relationships. Research is cited showing how repeated exposure, storytelling, and algorithm-driven content create an illusion of intimacy. Social media, with its rapid pacing and emotional cues, reinforces the sense that fans are part of the journey. Now, slow the tempo for a moment. Zoom in on the deeper question emerging beneath the headlines. Why do we care this much? Why does the relationship between two people we have never met provoke such intense emotional engagement? Experts suggest that in an era of fragmented communities and digital connection, parasocial relationships often fill emotional gaps. They offer consistency, familiarity, and a sense of belonging. But here's the turning point, the moment where this story becomes more than news. Parasocial relationships are not inherently harmful. They can inspire, comfort, and connect people across borders. The danger appears when emotional boundaries dissolve, when admiration turns into entitlement, when personal identity becomes entangled with someone else's narrative. The Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce spotlight forces this realization into the open. Suddenly, discussions about mental health, digital boundaries, and emotional self-regulation trend alongside celebrity updates. Fans reflect publicly on their feelings. Some step back from constant consumption. Others begin questioning how much access is too much. A relationship that never asked to carry this weight becomes the catalyst for global self-examination. And this is the payoff. The real impact of this story is not whether Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce stay together or part ways. The true climax lies in the awareness it has sparked. A collective moment where millions recognize how deeply media shapes emotion, attachment, and perception. In real time, the world is learning how love, admiration, and identity are rewritten by screens, algorithms, and constant visibility. This is not just entertainment news. This is cultural news, psychological news, social news. As the pace picks up again, fast cuts, dynamic visuals, rising energy, one message remains clear. In an age where every smile can go viral and every relationship becomes public property, emotional awareness is power. Knowing where admiration ends and selfhood begins may be the most important skill of the digital generation. If the story resonated with you, don't stay silent. Share it. Comment your perspective. Join the conversation. Because the global discussion about parasocial relationships isn't fading. It's just getting started. The conversation does not stop there. In fact, this is where it widens, stretching beyond fandoms and celebrity culture into something far more structural. As images of Taylor Swift cheering from luxury suites continue circulating, and clips of Travis Kelce referencing her presence resurface across platforms, analysts begin to notice a pattern. Attention behaves like currency. Every mention fuels algorithms. Every reaction multiplies reach. And every emotional response, positive or negative, keeps the cycle alive. Global search trends reflect this shift clearly. Keywords tied to parasocial relationship, celebrity attachment, fan psychology, and digital intimacy spike sharply alongside news of Taylor and Travis. What was once an academic term buried in psychology journals is now a mainstream phrase, spoken casually in TikTok videos, YouTube essays, podcasts, and primetime talk shows. The relationship becomes a gateway topic, a familiar entry point into a much more complex discussion. Newsrooms begin reframing their coverage. Headlines evolve from romance-focused language to broader cultural analysis. Articles ask whether modern fandom is losing its boundaries, or if society is simply witnessing a more honest display of emotional investment that has always existed. The tone shifts subtly, but meaningfully. This is no longer about who they are dating, but about why it matters so much. And the tension rises again, because not everyone agrees on where the responsibility lies. Some argue that celebrities knowingly cultivate intimacy through branding, storytelling, and constant access. Taylor Swift, known for her autobiographical songwriting and direct communication with fans, is often cited as an example of emotional transparency that deepens fan connection. Others counter that audiences must learn emotional discipline in a media environment designed to exploit attention. The debate becomes polarized. On one side, fans defend their feelings, insisting that emotional connection does not equal delusion. On the other, critics warn of unhealthy attachment and identity projection. Screens fill with long threads, reaction videos, and expert commentary. The discourse itself becomes content, watched, liked, shared, and monetized. Halfway through this unfolding narrative, something unexpected happens. People begin turning the lens inward. Across social platforms, users share personal reflections sparked by the Taylor-Kelce spotlight. They talk about realizing how much time they spend following celebrity lives compared to nurturing their own relationships. Some admit feeling genuine emotional impact from celebrity breakups or romances. Others confess that seeing Taylor Swift happy triggered unresolved feelings about their own love lives. This moment acts as a pattern interrupt. The pace slows. The noise softens. The visuals shift from stadium lights to quiet bedrooms, late-night phone screens, thoughtful faces lit by blue light. The story becomes intimate, not because of celebrities, but because of the audience. The news cycle pauses just long enough for self-awareness to surface. Experts describe this as a critical moment of digital literacy. Recognizing parasocial attachment does not require shame. It requires understanding. Humans are wired for connection, and storytelling has always been a vehicle for emotional bonding. What has changed is scale, speed, and accessibility. Celebrities are no longer distant figures on magazine covers. They are constant presences in pockets and palms. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, whether intentionally or not, embody this shift perfectly. One represents global pop culture dominance, emotional storytelling, and fan intimacy. The other represents mainstream sports, masculinity, and competitive spectacle. Together, they merge two massive audiences, creating an emotional crosscurrent strong enough to ripple worldwide. And then comes the quiet realization that anchors the story. This relationship is temporary. Like all celebrity moments, it will eventually be replaced by another headline, another couple, another viral moment. But the conversation it ignited may last much longer. The awareness around parasocial relationships is now part of public consciousness. Schools discuss it, therapists reference it, media creators acknowledge it. The audience has been named, and naming something gives people power over it. This is the real climax. Not a breakup, not a proposal, but a shift in understanding. The payoff is subtle yet profound. A generation learning to observe its own emotional reactions instead of being fully consumed by them. A collective pause that asks, "Why does this affect me?" instead of immediately asking, "What happens next?" In a culture addicted to immediacy, reflection becomes a radical CTAS coverage continues. Journalists emphasize balance, admiration without ownership, enjoyment without emotional dependence, connection without confusion. Taylor Swift remains an artist. Travis Kelce remains an athlete. Their relationship remains theirs. The audience, finally, begins to see itself not as a participant, but as an observer. And as the tempo rises once more, quick cuts, trending clips, refreshed timelines, the final message lands with clarity. In the digital era, attention is powerful. Emotion is valuable. Awareness is essential. The story of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce may have started as entertainment news, but it evolved into a global lesson about boundaries, identity, and emotional health. It reminds us that feeling connected is human, but staying grounded is a choice. So as the next notification lights up your screen, remember this moment. Engage if you choose, feel if you must, but stay conscious of where the story ends and where you begin. If this report made you think, react, or reflect, make your voice part of the conversation. Share it, comment your perspective, because the dialogue around parasocial relationships, digital culture, and emotional awareness is no longer niche. It's defining how we live, watch, and connect in the modern world. As the global discussion continues to expand, another layer begins to surface, one that goes beyond psychology and enters the realm of economics, media power, and cultural influence. Analysts point out that the Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce phenomenon sits at the intersection of entertainment, sports, and digital capitalism. Every appearance generates measurable impact. Spikes in NFL viewership, increased merchandise sales, boosted streaming numbers, and surging engagement across platforms. What looks like romance on the surface functions at scale like an attention engine. Major broadcasters quietly acknowledge the effect. Games featuring Travis Kelce see increased female viewership. Entertainment outlets report higher click-through rates when Taylor Swift's name appears in headlines. Brands take notice. Sponsorship analysts discuss emotional halo effects, where public affection toward a celebrity couple transfers trust and positivity to associated products and platforms. The relationship becomes a case study not just in parasocial attachment, but in how emotion drives markets. This realization adds pressure and complexity to the narrative. Because once emotion becomes monetized, the audience's role subtly shifts. Viewers are no longer just observers. They are participants in an economic feedback loop. Every like, share, comment, and reaction reinforces visibility. The system rewards intensity. Calm interest fades into obscurity, while strong emotion, adoration, or outrage gets amplified. In this environment, parasocial relationships don't just happen. They are optimized. Critics argue the structure blurs ethical lines. Should platforms slow the spread of emotionally charged celebrity content? Should media outlets contextualize more responsibly? Or is the responsibility entirely individual? These questions appear in opinion columns, university panels, and industry conferences. The Taylor Kelce spotlight keeps returning as the most accessible example. Familiar enough to engage, complex enough to examine. Meanwhile, the audience continues evolving. Longtime Taylor Swift fans, some who have followed her career for over a decade, describe a shift in their own perspective. Early fandom felt communal, almost protective. Now, many speak about learning to separate admiration from emotional dependency. Sports fans, drawn into pop culture discourse through Travis Kelce, express similar realizations. They notice how quickly narratives form, how easily perception overtakes reality. This cross-fandom collision becomes another pattern interrupt. Point two massive communities, once largely separate, now share a single storyline. Their interactions reveal differences in how parasocial bonds form. Music fandom, built on emotional storytelling and identity expression, often encourages deep personal connection. Sports fandom, structured around teams and competition, channels emotion outward. When these worlds merge, the intensity multiplies, and so does the opportunity for reflection at this stage. The news coverage grows quieter but deeper. Instead of breaking updates, long-form reports emerge. Documentaries are proposed. Podcasts dedicate entire seasons to unpacking the psychology of modern fame. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce appear less frequently in headlines, yet their presence lingers as a reference point. The story has entered its analytical phase where meaning outlasts immediacy. And then another subtle shift occurs. People begin talking about loneliness. Researchers link parasocial engagement to broader social patterns. Remote work, digital communication replacing physical community, and increasing isolation despite constant connectivity. In this context, parasocial relationships are reframed not as personal weakness, but as adaptive behavior in a fragmented world. When real-world connection becomes harder, symbolic connection fills the gap. This reframing changes the tone entirely. The narrative softens. Judgment gives way to empathy. The question is no longer why are people so obsessed, but what needs are being met here? Taylor Swift's relatability, vulnerability, and consistency offer emotional grounding. Travis Kelce's visibility, confidence, and presence in a team-based environment offer stability and structure. Together, they symbolize balance, whether intentionally or not. Yet the story does not romanticize unchecked attachment. Mental health professionals emphasize that awareness is the key distinction. Parasocial connection becomes harmful only when it replaces real-world relationships or dictates self-worth. Recognizing the boundary, knowing that the connection is symbolic, not reciprocal, restores agency to the individual. This message spreads steadily, less viral than gossip, but more enduring. As this understanding grows, media consumption subtly changes. Audiences begin questioning headlines. They notice when language is designed to provoke emotion rather than inform. They recognize cliffhangers, speculation, and exaggerated framing. The very techniques once used to maximize retention now face resistance. Viewers still watch, but with sharper eyes. This is where the story finds its deeper payoff. The Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce discourse becomes a rehearsal for media literacy, a practice ground for emotional regulation in a hyperconnected age. Without policy changes, without regulation, the audience begins adjusting itself. Slowly, imperfectly, but intentionally. And this is what makes the moment historically significant. Not because of who is dating whom, but because millions experienced, questioned, and recalibrated their emotional engagement simultaneously. Rarely does a single pop culture event create such widespread introspection. Rarer still is when that introspection enters mainstream news without being dismissed. As time passes, new stories will dominate attention. Algorithms will redirect focus. Another couple will trend. Another debate will ignite. But the framework established here remains. The language of parasocial relationships is now accessible. The awareness has been planted. The final message settles not as a warning, but as an invitation. To enjoy stories without surrendering selfhood. To admire without possession. To feel without losing balance. The Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce chapter will eventually close. Yet its impact on how audiences understand fame, emotion, and digital connection will echo quietly through future conversations. In a world built to capture attention, choosing awareness becomes the ultimate act of control. And as the screen fades, one truth remains clear: the most important relationship in the digital era may not be with the people we watch, but with how we choose to watch them. As the spotlight lingers, another dimension quietly enters the frame: power. Not political power, not authority in the traditional sense, but cultural power. the kind that shapes conversations, emotions, and even personal values without ever issuing commands. Taylor Swift has long been recognized as one of the most influential cultural figures of the modern era. Travis Kelce, through sports media dominance and mainstream visibility, occupies a parallel position in a different arena. Together, their visibility magnifies not just interest, but influence. Cultural analysts begin pointing out how quickly public mood aligns with celebrity narratives. When Taylor appears joyful, optimism trends. When speculation turns tense, discourse darkens. The emotional weather of the internet subtly shifts with every new image, every brief clip, every anonymous source quoted in headlines. This responsiveness reveals something unsettling and fascinating at the same time. Mass emotion is increasingly synchronized. In earlier decades, celebrity news traveled slowly. Time created distance. Distance created perspective. Today, immediacy collapses that buffer. Emotional reaction often precedes reflection. The Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce phenomenon unfolds in real time, exposing how quickly narratives solidify before facts fully exist. Speculation becomes certainty. Interpretation becomes belief. And belief, once shared widely enough, becomes reality in the public mind. This is where news reporting itself comes under scrutiny. Journalists face a dilemma. Ignore the story and lose relevance. Cover it superficially and fuel obsession. Cover it deeply and risk legitimizing emotional overinvestment. Many outlets attempt balance, contextualizing while still capitalizing on attention. The result is a hybrid form of news, emotionally engaging, psychologically aware, and algorithm-conscious. Some reports explicitly name parasocial dynamics in their headlines. Others subtly weave the concept into broader cultural commentary. This marks a turning point. The media is no longer pretending that audience reaction is incidental. It is now part of the story, and the audience notices. Comments shift tone. Where once there were declarations of devotion or outrage, there are now questions. Is this healthy? Why does this affect me? Am I projecting? These moments of pause are small but significant. They interrupt the endless scroll. They slow the emotional reflex. They introduce agency. Another pattern interrupt emerges here. Younger audiences raised entirely within algorithmic ecosystems begin discussing parasocial awareness openly. For them, this is not a shocking revelation but a language they've been waiting for. Older generations, less accustomed to constant digital intimacy, express surprise at the depth of emotional investment now normalized. The conversation becomes intergenerational, revealing how differently people adapt to mediated connection. In this space, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce become symbols rather than subjects. They represent the peak of visibility in a world that never looks away. Their every move is both ordinary and monumental. A smile is just a smile, but also a data point. A public appearance is just attendance, but also a narrative trigger. This duality defines modern fame. Importantly, neither figure actively narrates the discourse surrounding parasocial attachment. Their silence becomes meaningful. It reminds audiences that much of what feels personal is constructed externally. The relationship exists, but the emotional universe built around it belongs largely to observers. This realization reframes responsibility. If parasocial relationships are co-created, shaped by celebrities, media, platforms, and audiences, then awareness must also be shared. No single entity controls the outcome. Instead, the system reflects collective behavior. Attention teaches algorithms what to amplify. Emotion teaches media what to prioritize. Consumption teaches culture what matters. And culture listens. As weeks pass, the initial intensity softens. Not disappears, but matures. The story is still present, but less volatile. This cooling period is crucial. It allows for meaning to settle rather than spike. In this quieter phase, the most lasting insights take hold. Mental health advocates use the moment to discuss emotional boundaries publicly. Educators incorporate parasocial literacy into media studies. Content creators experiment with more transparent framing, acknowledging speculation rather than disguising it as certainty. These are incremental changes, but cultural shifts are rarely sudden. Another subtle payoff emerges here. People begin applying the same lens beyond celebrity relationships. They question influencer culture. They reconsider online friendships. They reflect on how often they confuse visibility with intimacy. The Taylor-Kelce discourse becomes a template for evaluating digital connection as a whole. This is where the story achieves depth. What started as entertainment news transforms into a collective learning process. Not everyone participates consciously. Not everyone agrees. But the conversation exists, and existence is enough to create momentum. Eventually, the news cycle will move on completely. That is inevitable. But something permanent remains embedded in public awareness. The understanding that emotional reaction is not accidental. It is designed, reinforced, and normalized. Recognizing that design does not eliminate emotion, but it restores choice. And that is the quiet conclusion of this unfolding narrative. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce will continue living their lives largely outside public interpretation, regardless of headlines. Their relationship may evolve, end, or simply fade from prominence. Yet the audience will not return to the same innocence it once had. Something has shifted.